What do you mean you don't have the keys? The house is empty. That can't be right. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The heat of the phone pressed against my ear, but it was the cold stare of the neighbor across the street that I couldn't shake. He was sitting on his porch, watching me, his eyes following my frantic pacing in front of what used to be my home. Jasmine Rojas. That's me. I'd driven 4 hours from my university to Bakersfield for spring break, expecting to step into a familiar world. But the world that greeted me was foreign, hollow. The front lawn bore a for sale sign like a slap in the face, and the house, my house, was bare, stripped clean of life. No curtains, no furniture, only 3 black garbage bags sitting like discarded secrets on the porch. I approached one, my breath hitching, and when I peeked inside, I saw it. My clothes, my books, fragments of my life, left to rot in plastic bags. When I went to college, my Uncle Thomas had said on the phone, his voice hesitant, "Your father said you should have called first." Should have called. First. I couldn't breathe as the words choked me, their weight settling in my chest. I hung up and dialed my father. The phone rang once, twice, then, "Hello?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "Dad, the house is empty. There are garbage bags with my stuff on the porch."
"What's going on?"
A pause, a hollow pause, then his voice, distant, detached.
"We moved. You're an adult now."
"Deal with it." Click. The line went dead, and I stared at the phone in disbelief. I dialed again. Voicemail. No surprise. I tried my mother's number. Same. Gabriel? My younger brother? No answer. The silence was deafening. Just like that, I had been erased from their lives. No warning, no goodbye, not even the courtesy of a forwarding address. I stood there in the dying light of the evening, watching the sunset stretch long, dark shadows across the yard. The maple tree my father and I had planted when I was 8 stood tall, its branches reaching toward a house that no longer belonged to us. The house was gone, but the weight of their abandonment was heavier than anything I could carry. I had been the one who stayed on track, the one who studied while others partied, the one who worked part-time and maintained a 3.9 GPA in pre-law.
I had been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble, and this was my reward.
I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I picked up those garbage bags and threw them into my car like they were nothing, like they were never mine. That night, I checked into a motel, the stale air heavy with the remnants of someone else's broken dreams. I spread my salvaged possessions across the scratchy bedspread, some textbooks, some winter clothes, and left behind a broken picture frame, a photo of my family at the beach 3 summers ago. Everyone smiling, everyone a liar. And then, I made a decision. If they wanted to erase me, I would return the favor. I would cut all ties, sever every link that had bound me to them, and build something they could never take away. Something that belonged solely to me. I had grown up believing family meant unconditional support. My parents, who had immigrated from Mexico before I was born, had made sure we understood the value of family.
"Family first," was the phrase they lived by, as they worked tirelessly to give me the life they never had. My father worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant. My mother cleaned houses, and they reminded us daily of their sacrifices. "We came here with nothing," my father would say over dinner, "so you could have everything." I took those words seriously. While my high school friends partied and worked part-time at the mall, I studied. I interned at the local courthouse. My acceptance to university on a pre-law scholarship was supposed to be the first reward on their investment. But Gabriel, my younger brother, was different. He struggled in school. He preferred video games to books. He'd been caught shoplifting twice. Yet my parents never threatened to kick him out. No, they defended him, supported him, forgave him. "He's finding his way," they would say. Maybe that's why their abandonment blindsided me. The responsible daughter was discarded, while the troubled son remained under their protection. That night in the motel, I called Professor Wilkins, my constitutional law instructor. She had become a mentor of sorts. "They just left," I told her. Disbelief thick in my voice. "I don't know what to do next. I can't go back to the dorms during break." Her voice softened. "Listen to me, Jasmine. Come stay with me until the dorms reopen. We'll figure this out together." Professor Wilkins lived alone in a Victorian house filled with books and 2 elderly cats. She gave me a key to her guest room. No time limit. "Focus on your studies this spring break," she said. "Relaxing can wait." I didn't relax. Instead, I threw myself into research. Professor Wilkins connected me to a summer internship at Riverton Law Partners, specializing in housing discrimination cases. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Channel it," she advised one evening, her eyes sharp. "The best advocacy comes from personal experience." I nodded, thinking about the crumpled family photos at the bottom of the garbage bag. My high school graduation, all those milestones. The celebrations my parents had once cherished, only to discard them like trash. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. My father, mother, brother, hell, even aunts and uncles who might dare to justify their betrayal. If anyone asked about my family, I kept it simple. "We're not in touch." No elaborate story. No pleas for sympathy. I was rebuilding, and sentimentality had no place in the foundation I was laying. Not anymore. The summer internship at Riverton Law Partners became the pivot I needed. What started as coffee runs and mundane research evolved the moment attorney Eleanor Grayson saw something in me. "You have something rare," she told me after I helped calm a young mother facing eviction. "You actually listen." And for the first time, I felt seen. I was quickly assigned to assist with intake interviews, meeting families pushed out of affordable housing by ruthless developers, elderly tenants being suffocated by illegal rent hikes, students trapped in a cycle of predatory landlords. Their stories hit me hard, reverberating in a place I couldn't quite name. One evening, long after everyone had gone home, I stayed late to organize case notes. The office was empty, save for the glow of fluorescent lights and the rustling of papers. At 9:00 p.m., Eleanor found me there, hunched over a stack of files. She leaned against the doorframe, her eyes piercing through the exhaustion I tried to hide. "These families have nowhere to go," I said, my voice thick with frustration. "The developers are offering them 2 weeks in a motel as compensation for breaking their leases early." Eleanor's sigh cut through the air like a blade. "Unfortunately, that's often more than the law requires, but it's not right." I wasn't finished. 2 weeks isn't enough time to find new housing, especially with security deposits and first month's rent. These people will end up homeless. The system is broken. She didn't argue. She simply asked, "So, what are you going to do about it?" Her question hung in the air like a curse. What could I do? A second-year pre-law student with an internship, caught in a system that chewed people up and spat them out? The answer came unexpectedly at a mandatory financial aid seminar. The presenter mentioned social innovation grants, seed money for projects designed to meet community needs. The deadline was 2 weeks away. I didn't sleep, not for 3 nights straight. I poured my frustration, my anger, my knowledge into a proposal for a housing advocacy program. I called it the Safe Space Initiative, a lifeline for students and low-income families facing eviction. Eleanor helped me fine-tune the legal details. Professor Wilkins reviewed the final draft as I waited, heart pounding to hear back about the grant. Then, 6 months after my parents erased me from their lives, the first voicemail came. My father's voice, unfamiliar, distant. "Jasmine, your mother is worried about you. Call us." No apology, no remorse. Just the same expectation that I would fall in line like the dutiful daughter I once was. I didn't respond. 3 days later, another voicemail. "This silent treatment is childish. Jasmine, we are your family." I saved it, the voice cracking with desperation, but I didn't call back. The messages came more frequently, demanding, pleading, each one a reminder of the family I had once believed in. A family that had cast me aside without a second thought. When the university awarded me the Social Innovation Grant, $25,000 to launch Safe Space Initiative, I didn't share the news with them. When Riverton Law Partners offered me a paid position to continue my work, I didn't share that either. Instead, I celebrated with my new family, the people who supported me not out of obligation, but because they saw me. By January, the Safe Space Initiative had already helped 23 students fight wrongful evictions. We operated out of a cramped, converted storage room at Riverton, with a small team of volunteers, paralegals, and law students working under my guidance. Every day, I rushed from class to the office, drowning in case files, constantly refining our strategies. It was exhausting, yes, but fulfilling in ways I never expected. Every family that kept their home, every student who avoided homelessness, it felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. Meanwhile, my parents' campaign to reconnect ramped up. The calls came in waves, sometimes multiple times a day, like a flood of poison designed to break my resolve.
But their voices, their demands, no longer held the power they once did. I had become unbreakable, and I wasn't going back. When I continued ignoring their calls, they escalated. Relatives became their unwitting messengers. "Your mother cries every night," my Aunt Lucia texted. "Can't you forgive them?" I didn't respond. Forgiveness required acknowledgement, and they had yet to admit any wrongdoing. No, I wasn't playing their game anymore. One Tuesday afternoon in February, as I counseled a sophomore named Devin, who had returned from winter break to find his landlord had rented out his room to someone else, the office phone rang. Safe Space Initiative. I answered it, apologizing to Devin with a gesture. "Jasmine, is that you?" My mother's voice. My stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "It's on your website," she replied, her voice thick with concern. "Why haven't you returned our calls? We've been worried sick." Devin shifted uncomfortably in his chair, sensing the change in atmosphere. I covered the mouthpiece, muttering, "I'm sorry. I need to handle this. Would you mind waiting outside for a moment?" Once Devin was gone, I uncovered the phone. "This is my workplace. Please don't call here again." "We are your parents," my mother said, her voice breaking, sounding like something desperately human beneath the walls she had built. "We have the right—" I cut her off, my voice rising. "When you put my belongings in garbage bags and sold our house without telling me, I'm not doing this. Now your father made a mistake." I could hear the desperation in her voice, soft and pleading. "We had financial troubles, Jasmine. The house was being foreclosed on. We were embarrassed." For a brief moment, a crack appeared in my resolve. Financial troubles, foreclosure. These words had never been mentioned before. Never. "If you were in trouble, you could have told me," I said, softer now, almost a whisper. "I would have helped. I was already sending money home." "You father wouldn't allow it," she said, and I could hear the faintest tremor in her voice. "His pride. You know how he is. Pride. I knew my father's pride. It had been the force that shaped every family dynamic since childhood. It ruled him like a god. But pride didn't justify what they had done.
I need to get back to work, I said firmly, cutting through the tension. Please respect my boundaries. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were trembling slightly as I replaced the receiver. The conversation had unearthed feelings I thought I had buried long ago. Anger, yes, but also a lingering sense of responsibility. A responsibility that had no place in my world anymore. Later that evening, Eleanor found me at my desk, staring at the intake files. The papers had blurred together, all the stories of displaced families merging into one unsolvable mass. She perched on the edge of my desk, her sharp eyes noticing the shift in my mood. "You seem distracted," she said, her voice low and concerned. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then told her about the call. "Part of me wants to believe they had a good reason," I admitted, "that it wasn't just cruelty." Eleanor's gaze hardened as she considered this. "People rarely act from pure cruelty, Jasmine. But reasons and excuses aren't the same thing. Whatever financial troubles they had, they chose to handle it by abandoning you without warning." She was right. Of course, she was. But my mother's explanation had planted a seed of doubt. What if there was more to the story? What if they had been desperate? The next day, against my better judgment, I did something I had resisted for months. I searched for my family online, and what I found shattered whatever fragile sympathy I had been clinging to. A cheerful Facebook post from my mother, dated just 3 weeks after they moved. It showed her and my father standing in front of a new house, smiling as if nothing had ever happened. The caption read, "New beginnings. So blessed, so blessed." There had been no foreclosure, no financial crisis, only a decision to leave me behind. The unanswered calls piled up. 100, 150, 200. Their voicemails evolved from demands to pleading, peppered with tidbits about their new life, as if nothing had changed between us. "Gabriel got accepted to community college," my mother reported in late March. "He's studying computer programming. You always said he was smart." "The neighbors brought us tamales," my father announced in April. "Not as good as yours, but they're trying to be welcoming." These casual updates, these smug, insignificant moments, infuriated me more than their initial demands for forgiveness. They were living their lives, forming new connections, celebrating milestones, all while I was still processing the trauma of their abandonment. Meanwhile, the Safe Space initiative was gaining traction. A local news station ran a feature on our work, interviewing several of the students we had helped. The university newspaper followed with a profile on me, highlighting my innovative approach to housing justice. The attention brought more cases, more calls, more emails, more work, and as the pressure mounted, I knew I couldn't sustain this alone. "We need more resources," I told Eleanor one afternoon, gesturing at the mountain of intake folders cluttering our small office. "More volunteers, more space, more funding." She paused, then spoke with a look of quiet determination. "I might have a solution. The Watkins Foundation is accepting proposals for their annual social justice grants." The pieces were falling into place. I just had to hold it together long enough to finish the puzzle. The grant from the Watkins Foundation was substantial enough to hire staff and secure proper office space. The application process was grueling. Weeks of drafting, redrafting, gathering testimonials from clients, compiling sobering data on housing insecurity among students. The final proposal ran to 47 pages, detailing the mission of Safe Space, our methodology, and measurable impacts. It was my masterpiece, a document that could take everything I'd built and elevate it into something permanent, But even as I submitted it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. I had no idea how true that feeling would prove to be. 2 days after submission, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. My hometown's area code. I answered cautiously, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. "Hello?" "Jasmine, it's Mrs. Hernandez from next door," came the voice of our former neighbor. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I found the house empty. The for sale sign driven into the lawn like a wound that wouldn't heal. "I hope it's okay that I called," she continued. "Your brother gave me your number. He said you might not answer if you saw their names on caller ID. My defenses rose immediately. "If this is about reconnecting with my parents, no, she interrupted quickly. "Well, not directly. It's about the house. Your old house. Someone broke in last night." I froze, a cold shiver running down my spine. "The police think they were looking for valuables, but of course, the place is empty," she said, her voice heavy with unease. "Your father asked me to check if perhaps you had come back for something. He didn't want to report a break-in if it was just you." Absurd. I could hardly keep the disbelief from my voice. "I haven't been back since that day, Mrs. Hernandez. Besides, I don't have keys anymore," she sighed, her voice lowering. "But there's something else. The intruder left something behind, an envelope with your name on it. The police gave it to me since I'm watching the property." My heart skipped. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it," she said, the rustling of paper loud in my ear. "But it looks official. There's a law firm's name on it. Official mail at your old address. No one should be sending you legal documents there. I know you updated your address months ago." I felt the first stirrings of dread. "Can you open it? Just tell me what it says." I heard the tearing of paper, followed by a long silence. "Mrs. Hernandez?" I asked, my pulse racing. It's about your grandmother's estate," she said slowly, as if still processing the words herself. "Your maternal grandmother in Mexico. My grandmother had died when I was 13. I barely remembered her." "What about her estate? It says you've inherited property in Oaxaca," Mrs. Hernandez continued, reading from the letter in a daze. "There's a bank statement, Jasmine. It shows a balance of over $400,000. My mind reeled, struggling to piece together the fragmented reality. That can't be right. My grandmother had lived simply. She didn't have that kind of money. "The letter says the property was developed after her death," Mrs. Hernandez added. "Resort condominiums. Your portion is the proceeds from the sale of 2 units. I grabbed a pen, scribbling furiously as Mrs. Hernandez dictated the law firm's contact information. My hand shook, the implications settling over me like a cold, heavy fog. "Does it say when this inheritance became available?" Mrs. Hernandez paused, shuffling through the papers. "Yes," she said, her voice faint with shock. "It was finalized last March." Last March, 1 month before my parents abandoned me. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. They had known about my inheritance. They had known, and they had left me behind. The revelation hit me with a brutal force, but before I could process it fully, the phone rang again. The Watkins Foundation. We'd been selected as finalists for their grant, and they needed a presentation for their board. Normally, I would have been elated. This grant could transform Safe Space from a scrappy student initiative into a legitimate nonprofit. But all I could think about was my grandmother's unexpected legacy, the betrayal I had just uncovered. After consulting with Eleanor, I contacted the Mexican law firm handling the estate. They confirmed everything. The inheritance was legitimate. The money was mine. Most telling of all, the notification had been sent to my parents as my legal guardians over a year ago, when I was still 19. They had kept this from me. I told Professor Wilkins during one of our regular dinners. They knew I had this inheritance coming, I said, my voice bitter. And they still put my stuff in garbage bags. Professor Wilkins set down her fork, her eyes narrowing as she processed the enormity of what I was saying.
Have you considered why?
She asked quietly.
Why?
I repeated, almost incredulously. They probably thought they deserved it more than I did. She didn't respond right away, but when she did, her voice was soft, yet resolute. Perhaps, but hiding an inheritance is difficult, Jasmine. They must have had a reason. What are you going to do with this? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My mind was swirling, drowning in questions I couldn't yet answer. Why did they leave me? And what would I do now with the money that should have been mine all along? I didn't know yet, but I was no longer the girl who had been abandoned. I was someone new, someone who was beginning to understand just how much power she truly held. I could have found out eventually. Maybe they planned to tell me on their terms, make me feel grateful, dependent. But as the realization sank in, I pushed my plate away, the appetite gone. Or maybe they never planned to tell me at all. The inheritance funds had been transferred to my account 3 days before the Watkins Foundation presentation. I hadn't decided what to do with the money. Its presence felt like a strange kind of security. For the first time since finding my childhood home empty, I felt financially untethered from my past, free from the grasp that had held me in place for so long. The money was a silent testament to everything I'd lost, and everything I could now claim for myself. The presentation at the Watkins Foundation was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I arrived an hour early, sitting in their sleek downtown office, reviewing my notes in the minimalist waiting area. The polished surfaces, the cool, immaculate decor, it all felt a little too perfect, too rehearsed. But I wasn't here to fit in. I was here to prove something. Our proposal requested $300,000 over 3 years to expand Safe Spaces services beyond the university to reach the broader community. It was ambitious, but necessary. Eleanor arrived 120 minutes before the scheduled time, as impeccable as always in a charcoal suit. "Ready?" she asked, sitting beside me. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, straightening my own navy blue blazer. Professional, but not intimidating. I had chosen it carefully.
"The board can seem formal," Eleanor warned, her tone clipped but confident. "But they care about impact. Focus on the human stories. Show them how safe space changes lives." The boardroom was colder, more sterile than I expected. 8 people sat around a polished table. Local business leaders, philanthropists, and a former judge. The foundation's director, William Watkins himself, rose to greet us with a tight smile. "Ms. Rojas, Ms.
"Grayson, welcome," he said, his voice pleasant but distant, gesturing to the presentation area. "We've been impressed by your written proposal. Show us why Safe Space deserves our support." I connected my laptop to their projector and began. I outlined Safe Space's journey, from a student project to a resource for the community. I highlighted key cases, systemic impacts, and the lives we'd changed. Eleanor chimed in with legal context, explaining how our model filled gaps in existing services. About 20 minutes in, as I was describing our vision for expansion, the boardroom door opened. A foundation assistant whispered something to Mr. Watkins, who nodded and looked at me with mild discomfort. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice low, eyes shifting slightly. "Ms. Rojas, there are some people here claiming to be your family. They're quite insistent on speaking with you." My heart stopped. Family? My family? I barely registered the words. What could possibly be so urgent after nearly a year of silence? "They say it's urgent," Mr. Watkins added, looking uncomfortable. "We can ask them to wait until you're finished." Eleanor touched my arm gently, her support unwavering. "Your call, Jasmine." I took a slow, steadying breath. After months of unanswered calls, after everything they'd done, they had tracked me down. To this moment, to the most important professional opportunity of my career. "Please tell them I'll speak with them after the presentation," I said, my voice remarkably steady. This moment was too important to let them interrupt. I couldn't let them have that power over me again. Mr. Watkins nodded approvingly, and the assistant left to deliver my message. I turned back to the projector, but my mind was racing. What could possibly be so urgent? What had changed in the silence they'd imposed on me? I finished the presentation on autopilot, my voice smooth and professional despite the emotional chaos swirling beneath. The board members asked insightful questions I answered thoroughly, determined not to let my personal drama disrupt this opportunity. This was my moment. I was in control now. When they finally thanked us and promised a decision within 2 weeks, I felt hollow. Not hopeful, hollow. "You were excellent," Eleanor said as we gathered our materials, "especially under the circumstances." Outside the boardroom, my parents and Gabriel waited in the reception area. My mother rose as soon as she saw me, her face a complex mixture of emotions: hope, fear, determination. My father remained seated, his expression guarded, almost as if preparing for something. Gabriel hovered awkwardly between them, looking everywhere but at me. "Jasmine," my mother began, stepping forward. "We need to talk." Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "I'll give you privacy. Call me later." She gave me a supportive smile, then stepped back, leaving me to face them alone. "Why are you here?" I wanted to scream. But instead, I swallowed the surge of anger, the bitter taste of everything they'd taken from me. "How did you even find me?" I asked, voice tight. "We saw the newspaper article about your housing program," my mother explained. "It mentioned the Watkins presentation today. We've been trying to reach you for months." "I'm aware," I wanted to say. "I've been avoiding your calls for months." 247 calls is hard to miss, I said, the words biting, cutting through the calm facade I tried to maintain. My father finally stood, his expression hardening. "This has gone on long enough." I didn't know what would come next, but I wasn't the same person who had been abandoned by them. I wasn't that girl anymore, and whatever they wanted, it wouldn't change that. "Jasmine, you're being childish." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Childish? I came home to find my belongings in garbage bags. "You sold our house without telling me. You abandoned me. And I'm the childish one?" "We made a mistake," my mother said, her voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't place. "We want to make it right now." "Make it right?" I repeated, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. "After a year, after I've rebuilt my entire life without you." "Why now?" Gabriel shifted uncomfortably between us, his eyes darting back and forth as if trying to navigate an invisible minefield. "Just hear them out, Jazz." I wasn't about to play this game. "I know about the inheritance," I said flatly, watching their reactions closely. "Is that why you're suddenly interested in reconciliation? Because the money came through?" My father's face darkened. His voice, when it came, was sharp with anger. "You've always been so quick to judge, Jasmine, so quick to discard." "You knew about my grandmother's estate last March," I countered, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You kept it from me, then threw me away." My mother's eyes widened, but she didn't say a word. "I know everything," I confirmed, my gaze never leaving theirs. The question now was simple. "What do you want?" The reception area of the foundation was no place for a family reckoning, so we relocated to a nearby coffee shop. I sat across from them, maintaining an impenetrable physical and emotional distance as they attempted to explain the inexplicable. "We were ashamed," my mother admitted, cradling her untouched coffee as if it were the only thing keeping her together. "The foreclosure, your father lost his job, and I couldn't make enough cleaning houses. We couldn't tell you." "So, instead of asking for help, you abandoned me?" I asked, my voice low and controlled, a direct hit to the core of their excuses.
"We found out about your grandmother's money right after you left for spring semester,"
my father explained, his voice unsteady for the first time.
"The lawyers said you'd inherit when you turned 21. We thought if we moved, started over somewhere new, we could fix our finances before you found out. By selling the house and leaving you with nothing, we panicked."
My mother's words tumbled out, desperate, clinging to something she wanted me to believe. "Your father thought you would be better off without our problems. You had your scholarship, your university friends." "And now?" I pressed. "Why the sudden change of heart?" They exchanged glances, uneasy, and Gabriel, always the peacemaker, spoke up. "They made a terrible mistake. Jazz, they know that now." I felt a tight knot of anger in my chest as my father grunted, adding,
"The safe space thing. We saw the newspaper article."
"We saw what you've accomplished, and we realized we'd lost something precious." I translated their words bitterly, my gaze sharp as I looked at them. "No, you lost your successful daughter." "My family," my mother insisted, her voice breaking with emotion, but I could see the cracks in her facade. I studied them, these people who had once shaped my entire world, only to shatter it with a single decision. My mother looked older, her once dark hair streaked with gray. My father seemed diminished somehow, his shoulders slumped beneath a worn jacket that seemed too heavy for him. Gabriel had grown an inch since I last saw him, his boyish features beginning to mature into something else, something less innocent. "I've built a new life," I said finally, my words cutting through the air. "New connections, people who value me, regardless of my accomplishments."
"We're still your family,"
my father insisted, but I met his gaze steadily, unwavering.
"Family doesn't put your belongings in garbage bags,"
I said coldly. Rising from the table, I placed enough cash to cover all our drinks and turned to leave. "I don't need closure. I've moved forward. But if you truly want to make amends, start by respecting my boundaries." As I walked away, I felt something unexpected, something I didn't expect to feel at all. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but a quiet, unshakable strength. I had faced my abandoners on my own terms and walked away whole. The next morning, the call came from the Watkins Foundation. Safe Space Initiative had been awarded the full grant amount, plus an additional $50,000 for operational expenses. My heart skipped at the news, but it wasn't the victory I expected. The feeling was different, sweeter, maybe. That afternoon, a national news outlet contacted me about featuring Safe Space in a segment on innovative approaches to housing justice. It was everything I had worked for. When the story aired 2 weeks later, it reached millions of viewers, including, I later learned, my parents. They never called again. Sometimes the family you build yourself becomes stronger than the one you were born into. And as I looked toward my future, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again measure my worth through someone else's eyes.